Okay, so what is startuplink.com about?
Startup Link is a platform for information and connection for the global startup ecosystem, trying to put into life startups from all parts of the world.
With 70,000 startups already registered.
That's a little bit tricky because some of those actually,
Expired?
some of them have expired, yeah. So I would say that we have a few thousand startups registered, almost 1,000 accelerators and co-working spaces, many freelancers. So yeah, it's something that we basically launched in the beginning of this year. So we got a lot of press from CNN, from Forbes, from the Next Web, from Guy Kawasaki. You're putting something out there, you hope for the best, and it looks like people like it.
Hi, my name is Jasom.net, and in this episode of Yellowhead Podcast, I was speaking with David Eli from startuplink.com, and this is our conversation. Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
My very first question is always which activity do you wish to promote?
Okay, so basically, I think it would be startuplink.com. It's a global map of the startup ecosystem, and we want startup co-founders to put themselves on the map. We build the site to basically stay a little bit away from Silicon Valley and document the startup ecosystem in other places as well. So it would be good to bring to people's attention that this site exists and they can go on the site, see all the startups that are relevant to them by industry, by location, communicate with those startups and connect to the global startup ecosystem.
Perfect. I already registered interview.com. And
Beautiful.
I also found some new startups near me. So it's really nice database. Uh,
Actually, it's great because, when we start a startup, we don't pay that much attention to the competition or to people doing the same stuff that we're doing, less of competition, but more like cooperation. Like what can you do when you have a startup how can you boost your startup by working with other startups as well? It's a very isolated thing, we think. And actually, one of the good ways of doing it is try to figure out who is doing kind of what we're doing and connecting with them and try to building alliances because chances are against you statistically when you have a startup. So if you don't work with others, they're even more against you. And that's what we're trying to build, like a place where you can actually find things that will help you.
and also, when you are working in a group, motivation is nice added value because you keep each other motivated.
Totally agree. Startups, one of the biggest problems in startups is team dropping out or people dropping out or people stopping before they should stop. I've seen a lot of co-founders quitting way too early. And one of the reasons why people quit is that because they feel very lonely. You're building your thing and you're not getting a lot of feedback and you feel like you're building it for yourself in a way. And at some point you just break. So I think each of us, regardless of Startup Link can be a nice way of doing it, but each of us has to, while building their startup, you have to connect yourself to the ecosystem and you have to do it because basically, if not, this loneliness is gonna make you close the startup a lot earlier than before. We're social animals, so we have to find ways while building our startups to connect with other entrepreneurs, or it's just gonna be a very boring, lonely, and sometimes depressing, journey that on the low points you have no one to talk to. And so trying to find the ways to connect to others is important.
Yeah, I would say that it's important to stay between people with same culture, with same way of thinking. Not it's not good when you socialize with guys, for example, which work in auto service, because they cannot help you with a feedback or can feedback you just a little.
Yeah, I totally agree. They will also question the rationality of you working on a startup
Yes, because
because
they have different mindset.
different mindset and they receive salaries. So they're the first ones to say, "Hey, well, what are you doing? You don't even know if it's gonna work." And if you're gonna hang out with those guys too much, the doubts are gonna cripple.
You will
So
not,
yeah,
no doubts will gonna cripple. You became a salary man.
Yeah,
became a
yeah,
salaryman.
you will go to the 9 to 5. So basically, yeah, I think it's good, if you have friends and they're working in companies and you're starting an entrepreneurship path, it's not like you have to tell them, hey, I'm not never going to beer with you, but you have to be in a situation that you surround yourself also with entrepreneurs because also for the mindset, the motivation, and also for the advice and the emotional support, others will simply try looking for your best interest, try to get you away from the path you're taking, not only for your best interest, also validating their own assumptions about life because
Yeah, yeah.
they would like to get out of the 9 to 5. So for them, in a way, if you're successful, if your bet is going to be successful, it's kind of a challenge on what they're doing in a way. So yeah, surrounding yourself by fellow entrepreneurs is really important. Finding the ways to do it. I recommend, for example, meetup.com, which is great site for going out for meetups and meeting like-minded entrepreneurs. Surround yourself with entrepreneurs. This is really important.
So who is behind the startup Blink?
So basically, my co-founder and my co-founder Roderick Warren is in Switzerland, and myself, Eli David, I'm from Israel. We love startups, and we decided that we want to work on this about 1 year and a half ago. We started really, really seriously a year ago. Quite a big challenge for two people to map the entire global startup ecosystem. We don't have a lot of investors. We have very small investors that believe in the idea and in the vision, but professional investors are currently out of this project.
What keeps you going?
What keeps us going is basically the feedback. By the way, Jason, we have a new tab on Startup Link called Reporters, which is kind of new.
I,
It's only 1 week ago. I don't know. Did you see it?
I see I am already in.
You signed up in the reporter tab.
Yes, I am
Ah, that's
reporter.
beautiful. That's great. So I hope that very soon you're gonna receive some approaches from startup because we haven't announced it yet, and I hope they will. That I think it's a great way for startups to finally approach reporters in a direct way. One of the things that we're inserting slowly on Startup Link is not only have the startups, adding themselves with the description, but also that's why we call the site Startup Link. The startups are also putting links out there, which
Yes,
is basically
that's my next question. What is the Blink about? It's something like Twitter status or?
it's interesting. We have to figure out what is the blink about, what are the blinks about when people use it, and then we understand it ourselves. But basically, the idea is that it's a communication system within Startup Link of startups and other ecosystem players like co-working places, accelerators, ambassadors, influencers to announce, and reporters as well, by the way, to announce the recent updates in a way. So in a way, we want to create a situation that you don't only sign up, put your profile out there, but you keep on basically updating about things that you need, about recent developments. Now, unlike Twitter, a lot of the things that go on Twitter are kind of spammy in a way. Not really interesting, like, hey, let's go for lunch and so on. And we're trying for the blinks to be more like, hey, I achieved a huge milestone. I did something. We want the blinks to be a little bit more relevant, something that showcases the latest news from your startup. In a way, you're becoming a journalist of your own startup and you're only writing about important things that happen. That's if you're a startup, and by doing that, you can get traction because people like reporters can see latest news from a startup wherever, and then say, "Whoa, that's actually really interesting latest news." You just close the contract with a big client, or you just developed this specific product last month, and then you can approach them as a reporter or as an investor or whatever. And it's basically a communication system that we're working very hard on to create value and to not be in a situation that Startup Link is a static page, a
Hmm.
description and that's it. We want something else. We want a little bit more, like we said, the connection, connecting with each other, the interactiveness. So this is something that we're trying to constantly develop.
So I see Startup Blink as a social network for startups.
It's a Startup Link is first of all an information network where you consume information about stuff that you care about, but also a social network in the sense of that it keeps on being updated. Uh,
Social info network.
Something
Mm.
like that. Yeah, that's a nice definition. I might use it from now. I'll steal it from you.
What are your other activities aside the startup link?
So I get my money from lingolearn.com. It's a site for teaching languages. This is a startup that I started 5 years ago. We have few hundred students. Actually, we have, I think, yeah, a few hundred students, and we have about 50 teachers from around the world teaching various languages. So that's what I do when I don't work on Startup Link. Other than that, I have a nomadic blog called becomenomad.com, which is basically discussing the lifestyle of traveling and working on the same time. Because in the last 5 years, I've lived in about 30 countries. I keep on changing countries as a lifestyle, as a decision. Let's say that I have too many activities. That's something that I always recommend to people. In retrospective, try working on one project only. And I pushed myself to a situation because I always want to create something new that I work on too many projects and then you lose the focus. Yeah, I'm doing basically Startup Link. I'm doing LingoLearn. I'm doing the blog. I used to do a lot of business consulting as well, which I stopped. And I travel a lot, so lots of activities.
This is what you said, do more than one project in one time. And it's what I call diversification, like try to diversify your income. Don't put all eggs into one basket. But there is a problem. When you are working on more than one project, you lost your focus.
I agree. What I figured out after years of doing this, of diversification, is that you shouldn't diversify.
You
What you sh
shouldn't, right?
You shouldn't.
I
You
I
should.
shouldn't. I shouldn't.
Right. So
Uh-huh.
basically, you have to. I think what everyone has to do is very simple. First of all, say what is your main project, and you have to have a very clear answer. What is your main project? The main asset you're working on. There is only one. There can't be more than one. Now, the only thing that you can do and should do is subsidize it. What do I mean? I
Mhm.
mean that if your main project is something that is probably only going to generate revenue in 1 year from now, it doesn't mean that you're going to do it full time because it's going to be a little bit crazy. No, you're going to be left without money. So
Mhm.
basically, pick your main project and then pick a subsidizing channel that will allow you to give oxygen to your main project. So don't only focus on one, focus on the main project or the main asset you're building, and also focus on a revenue channel that will sustain you while building this project. And I think this is the best way of actually looking at it. This is what I basically do
It
now.
makes sense. It makes sense.
I'll give you a little bit of my history. When I started LingoLearn 5 years ago, this was my main project. And how did I subsidize it? By freelancing and preparing business plans for people.
Hmm.
Now I'm working on Startup Link. Startup Link is my main project. How do I subsidize it? I use LingoLearn as something that gives me oxygen because LingoLearn is already making a little bit of profit, and I ditched the business planning and the freelancing. So uh, sometimes your main project is gonna be what subsidizes your next main project. The thing is, do not mix two main projects on the same time that are assets on the long term. That's something I learned as an advice. I think it's a good advice for people.
So continue with a source of income and keep working on something what is pushing you forward. And this is the time for our last question. What is your startup tactic?
I think my basic tactic is never quit.
Never quit. Yeah, that's very important
More than
position.
all the big words about lean startup and da, 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 da. The only thing I learned so far in 5 years of doing it is basically never quit.
And this was David Eli from startupblink.com. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.
My name is Jasom.net, and this was 5 episodes of Yellowhead Podcast. Follow me on Twitter and subscribe for my channel on YouTube.